Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the pub to answer your burning questions. No Chris Hamill today because he's up in Newcastle interviewing some talent, some players. So we've replaced him with even bigger talent. It's Doogie Critchley. Pato's here as he is every week. And the first question was sent in by P Steele 22 on Twitter. He says, which Premier League team has disappointed you the most at the start of the season? Any questions? Any takers here? I'm throwing Tottenham Hotspur into the mix. I've been to see them twice at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Both times I've watched them, I thought they're incredibly disappointing. Obviously, watched them on the telly against Manchester City as well when they were pulverised. I don't know what's going wrong with them. But there's definitely problems at Tottenham Hotspur. What do you boys think about Spurs so far?
I haven't actually been able to catch them live because I was away for 10 days. But from what I've seen on highlights packages, I just think they've just been so narrow. I think they've been quite easy to defend against. I particularly caught the highlights of that Newcastle game. Whilst I want to give Newcastle a lot of credit for looking more organised than they have at any stage this season. And Joelinton, I thought, played really well. Atsu had a really good game, buzzing around in various different places. Almiron looked like he was finding some form as well. So credit to Newcastle. But Spurs were just so disappointing. There was no cutting edge. I thought the decision to sort of not really utilise Eriksen from the start in these games, I get that he wants to angle for a move to Real Madrid, and some people are saying that Pochettino's sort of punishing him for being so open about his desire to seek a new challenge in early June. But you can't, this midfield and this attack isn't working in its current formation. I don't think a midfield diamond has worked at all so far. Eric Lamela, for all his great attributes, and that he's a fantastic defensive forward, I think he's a very useful squad player, isn't Christian Eriksen. Lo Celso hasn't been fully fit to play yet. And against teams like Aston Villa and Newcastle at home, if you want to challenge for the Premier League title, you need to be steamrolling these sides, particularly early doors. I thought they looked very shaky against Aston Villa for the first 60 minutes. And then Newcastle really struggled to get going at any point. And then issues at the back as well. Jan Vertonghen's sort of been seemingly frozen out. Davinson Sanchez just hasn't recaptured anywhere close to that form that, he had a really solid debut year, 17-18. Last year, massive drop-off, and this year hasn't started well at all. So there's issues sort of throughout the side. And then I hate to pick on a young player, but I just don't think Kyle Walker-Peters looks ready for a starting role as a right-back in a Spurs side. I think he had a pretty shabby game defensively against Man City, which you can say for a lot of fullbacks this season. So I hate to pick him
Sterling, to be fair.
Up against Sterling, but completely no idea where it was for that De Bruyne cross to the back post. And I just think Spurs, they're sort of paying the price for not recruiting another Trippier replacement in there, especially with Foyth's injury. So there's a lot of issues at the moment for Spurs, but I'd still say that although it's been a pretty mediocre start, they'll be absolutely fine by the end of the year. When these players, I don't think Eriksen will leave. It's obviously, by the time this comes out on Sunday, it'll be one day until the window closes. And we just haven't heard enough chatter about that move it seems like it's all gone a bit quiet. Maybe he'll be unhappy for a couple more weeks and then get sort of eased back into the side. But I think when they get all their players fit and firing, they'll be fine and still comfortably finish third, in my opinion. But it's not been a good start.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think they'll finish third, but there are definite worries. Like the situation with Jan Vertonghen must be playing on Poch's mind because they've obviously had a falling out. So does he bring him back into the system at the expense of Davinson Sanchez, who is one of his younger players? I've heard that Eric Dyer is training as the right back in training as a potential replacement for Kyle Walker-Peters. He's obviously played there before, but
makes sense.
Don't really know whether he fits into Poch's system of having his fullbacks quite high up the pitch. Some of his substitutions were quite puzzling, I thought. The replacement when he brought Ben Davis on in like the 85th minute for Danny Rose felt a bit odd on the weekend. Playing Lo Celso as a right winger felt quite out of place, and obviously forced to play Moussa Sissoko as a right back, given that Kyle Walker-Peters was injured. But it just seems a little bit chaotic behind the scenes, and I think it probably is to do with them bedding in, but they pass too much, it felt like, on the weekend. It was like a consistent string of passing around the 18-yard box in a U shape that never went anywhere. I think they had 80% possession and had 2 shots on target. There was like no real cutting edge. I think that's the first time that Son, Moura and Kane have started together since December, and it properly showed. There was no connection there. Son was playing in the same areas that Lucas Moura wanted to play in. It felt like, because Newcastle was so deep, and obviously Moura and Son want to get in behind, they were pretty much null and void. And then Eric Lamela I kind of like Eric Lamela. He's not the worst player. I think he's a decent squad player, but he doesn't have Eriksen's cutting edge to play in behind Kane. Just doesn't have it. So they need Eriksen to come back rapidly. And Ndombele picking up an injury, I think, is a bit of a shame because he'll probably replace one of Winks or Sissoko. And then Lo Celso, I don't know where he fits. I don't know where he plays Lo Celso because I think as much as Winks is average, he's probably going to play nearly every game Harry Winks is a 6.
The thing is, though, Lo Celso could play there, and I think that if your issue is ball progression, then that's kind of where you want to drop Lo Celso in. Like, plus they've got Dele Alli to come back and play regularly.
Exactly. Where does he play?
Well, this is the thing. Like, they've got too many options there, if anything. So I don't have any fear for Spurs going forward because what is the path to Spurs getting better? Any of these guys getting fit or playing regularly.
Yeah.
That will solve it. That genuinely will solve it. If Eriksen's playing every game, they'll be fine. If Ali comes back and is playing most games, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I think it is a matter of those things happening just for them to get going. I mean, it's troubling that in the Newcastle loss, they were actually the worst team, as opposed to, say, Man United against Palace, who were comfortably the better team and got a bit unlucky. But the Villa result, for all that everyone goes on about how good Villa were and how bad Spurs were, Villa didn't really create anything and Spurs created a lot.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a little bit of sometimes you're watching a Man City game and I think, wow, this team's doing really, really well against Man City. You know, they're getting through them, they're getting breakaways, they're getting chances. And then I look at the shot count and the team's had like 3 shots. And that's kind of what it reminds me of with Spurs. Like, they were bad for a while against Villa. Everybody said how great McGinn and Grealish were, and they were all over the pitch, but they had no control of the game. And when they were trying to create chances, they ultimately created nothing. And when Spurs really turned it on, they pulled away. So if it weren't for the Villa result, I would be much more worried about Spurs. But they were more dominant in that result by shots and expected goals than, say, Liverpool were against Arsenal at the weekend. And I think we'd all agree that Liverpool were extremely comfortable against Arsenal.
Were you not more concerned in a way by the manner of the way that they drew with Man City? Because that was a freak result and they got annihilated by that City side. And at this early stage, they looked, streets behind them. I thought it was a really a troubling result.
I don't know. City do that to pretty much everybody at home. And Spurs got pummeled there. Spurs got pummeled in both legs against them in the Champions League last season and still managed to go through against them. Like I think if you look at the City thing as like a one-off game. Like, getting battered by City happens to everybody, and the fact that they got a point out of it is like a bonus point.
Rarely happens to Liverpool though. And if you're wanting to be up there competing for second and third, like, I thought it was quite embarrassing personally.
I don't know. Like, it's not great, but I don't know, Liverpool are probably the only team who really get close. And to be fair, Liverpool should have lost at home to City last season and then they lost away to City. So, I mean, I think that in one game at the Etihad, City are going to pretty much destroy anybody. So it doesn't really make me worry too much. Whereas the Newcastle result, like you say, if you want to end up in the top half of the top 4, then you kind of do need to be able to just roll over those teams regularly.
So what would you boys do with their starting 11 when everybody is back fit and firing? Do you bring Jan Vertonghen back? Because Poch is saying it's tactical reasons that he's not playing him in a 2 alongside Alderweireld, which to me makes no sense given he's been the starting alongside Alderweireld in the back 2 in the same system for the last 2 years. So
yeah, I would probably definitely bring him back in. And then I was just criticising 5 minutes ago their midfield diamond, but I think with their resources in midfield, I think I'd rather play Lo Celso, Ndombele and Eriksen on the pitch, and I'd probably play Eriksen as a 10 behind Son and Kane.
What, and then play Winks at the base?
Play Winks at the base and Ndombele and Lo Celso either side, potentially.
I'd bin Winks, play Lo Celso at the base, and then play Ndombele. I just want to get all my best players in the team, so I want to play. If everyone's fit, I want to play Eriksen, I want to play Ali, I want to play Lo Celso, Ndombele, Son, and Kane. Like, I want to play all of them. The only problem is their fullbacks are not athletic enough to cover for that at the moment, right? Like, Danny Rose is still pretty good, but on the right wing they've got virtually nothing. So my ideal formation you'd have to play Aurier and Rose probably for it to work. Yeah,
I think Aurier, I don't think he's going to get a minute this season really. He didn't even travel to Manchester as part of the squad. Really? I think I read The Athletic this morning and they were saying that Tottenham are still looking to sell him before the window closes.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
So if he leaves, then it's going to be Foyth, I'd imagine, playing the most minutes along with Kyle Walker-Peters.
Foyth is pretty athletic. I don't know. Like if you don't do that, then you don't really want to commit to any system that results in like Lucas playing huge numbers of minutes or Winks playing huge numbers of minutes. But I think they will both get a lot of minutes this season.
Yeah, I definitely think Harry Winks will. I think he's growing into a little bit of a Pochettino favourite, and to a level a bit of a fan favourite. He's obviously not the most creative or the best progressor, but it does a lot of kind of off the ball work for the rest of the midfielders. And I think our idea of playing Lo Celso back in that PSG role, where he's a lot deeper, I think Poch sees him very high at the pitch given the weekend. Like coming on and playing as a right winger, and he was extremely advanced. He was like playing on a similar sort of line to Lucas Moura.
But maybe that's about the shape of that particular game. Like I agree, it does seem like in the long run he was thinking about him as like kind of playing in the role that Eriksen plays, because obviously great creative numbers last season. But I guess I look at it and I think this year you've got Eriksen and Ali, and where you don't have as much strength is in the defensive midfield zone. So that's where I try and get him in, and I just think he's going to give you a bit more ball progression. Like last year when you were saying like their fullbacks played high up, that's partially because that was how they got ball progression, right?
Yeah.
Like Trippier and Rose were doing a lot of it because the midfield was so weak. This season the midfield's unbelievably strong, and now the fullback zones are weak, so you can play more reserved fullbacks and rely on those midfielders to do everything both defensively and offensively.
It does kind of feel weird though, now we look at that Trippier sale at 20 mil, like it feels like what was the point of that if they're now going to have to play Juan Foyth there and lose all of the impetus on the right hand side. Like I understand the Sessegnon signing if they're going to want to play somebody a little bit higher up, and Danny Rose maybe he isn't favoured by the club given that they tried to sell him on deadline day, didn't they, to Watford. I think if they're going to play somebody high at the pitch, they may as well use Sessegnon. But the right-hand side is like Walker-Peters, especially Villa. What I noticed with Villa was they were actively looking to funnel the ball to Walker-Peters.
Yeah, of course.
Because they knew that he's not the most creative. They know he's not going to be overlapping and beating men. And that's a concern. Like Trippier at least played with people's minds in the fact that, we don't want the ball delivered from Trippier because it's going to cause a problem. Walker-Peters, they don't have that issue.
Yeah, I think as much as we praised their business this summer and bringing in like two of the most outstanding young midfielders in Europe, having said all season they needed more midfielders in, fair play, but they've almost flipped their problems. Like fullback depth has always been one of their strengths over the last 4 or 5 years. And then they let go of Llorente, didn't bring in a direct replacement for him either. So it's Kane and Son, which is great, but a serious injury to Kane, which he's likely to pick up at some stage this season, it leaves them a bit short. So they just still don't have that complete squad. And even though they've got better depth in midfield, I'm still like, you've helped yourself out, but to the detriment of other areas, seemingly.
But equally, like I think we can all agree they've started disappointingly. So to answer Steele's question, I think they've been up there with the most disappointing teams at the start of the season, but they're going to be fine. Yeah. When everybody's back, firing and fit, they'll be absolutely fine and they'll finish in the top 4.
And when people are seeing this, they'll be playing in the North London derby this afternoon. I expect them to be better in that game than they were against Newcastle.
Hopefully, otherwise they can get run over.
Well, it'd be lovely if they got run over. It's weird though that they came out of this result. Arsenal got pummeled last weekend as well, and yet afterwards everybody was absolutely convinced that Arsenal were going to batter Spurs in the North London derby. So it'd be intriguing. But like you were saying about Kyle Walker-Peters, I do think that we'll see Arsenal try and funnel the attacks that way, because you can't get through the middle anymore, but you can get through on the right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not going to be making any more predictions though after the Pookie thing. So other teams that are potentially disappointing but might not have the availability to turn it around like Tottenham. We've got down here Watford. Who wants to take Watford?
Do you want to go
Watford I think have been a bit unlucky at the start of this season. By expected points they should be around 3.4. They're on 0.
Yeah.
So they should be pretty much level with Leicester, and instead they are propping up the table. When you look at expected goals difference, they're only about -1, which is actually better off than Spurs and Arsenal. Admittedly, those guys have gone away to the big teams, whereas Watford, Brighton is not spectacular.
No.
Like their fixtures have not been terribly difficult, and that 3-0 at home to Brighton is troubling. 1-0 away at Everton happens to everyone. You'd expect that game to be tight. 3-1 at home to West Ham. They just could not stop West Ham getting good shots. They got a ton of shots in that game. I think Watford had 17 shots, something like that in that game. West Ham had fewer, but had out of 16 shots, 10 of them were on target because they were just getting high quality chances. And we've said for a while that Watford are not a particularly talented squad, but they've got a good manager who has a good system that gets the most out of them. But sometimes when you're in those games where you're only really producing half chances, the difference is made by just having a better quality of forward. And I don't know, it's strange to me that it looks like they couldn't get a work permit for Cucho Hernandez, who I think would otherwise have probably come into the squad. But they sold Dodi Lukebakio, and now Dini's out, and they brought in Danny Welbeck. Like, it just seems like they always, that whoever's organising their young player acquisition is quite smart, but whoever's like seeing which players actually get into the first team, in this case Gracia, they seem to be much more regressive. Last season, Deulofeu carried them for a long time. That obviously hasn't happened yet this year. I think he ended up with 15 goal involvements last year, but so far this season hasn't got a goal or an assist.
Yeah.
So I expect Watford to be fine. I do, unless they sack Gracia.
Which is definitely happening.
Well, yeah, because the Pozzi who own the club and own Udinese as well, notoriously kind of scissor-handed.
Well, it's worked for them though. That's the thing. They've got a history of sacking managers and it being successful. So I think Gracia is at the moment being saved by an FA Cup run.
EFL Cup run, as in the game that they won last night.
No. I mean last season when they got to the final of the FA Cup.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right.
That getting to a cup final, I think, is propping him up.
Yeah, although the performance in that game shouldn't really prop them up at all.
Yeah, but getting to the final, I think Watford knew they were never going to beat City. So
I got slightly embarrassed last year. I predicted them to go down and ended up with massive egg on my face. So I'm not going to do the same this year, but I was not that impressed with their summer recruitment. I mean, up until the last day, they'd spent $6 million on Craig Dawson, that was it. And look at the teams around them, all below them. Look at the strengthening that likes of Newcastle, Aston Villa have done, Brighton. You know, you can't afford to sit still in this league, and I think they did in the summer. And they just haven't started well at all. And after Newcastle this game, I think they play Wolves, Arsenal and Man City in their next 3 games. So that's just, they could be under massive pressure by the end of September, early October.
Yeah, potentially
with one win if they beat Newcastle. Because on paper, you wouldn't expect them to win any of them.
Is that away at Newcastle?
I think it's away at Newcastle.
On the other hand, you think Ismail Assar looked decent when he came on the other day, and so did Welbeck actually. And they do still have quite a lot of forward options, even if none of them is like truly spectacular. If Ismail Assar really picks up this season, then they'll probably be fine. But fundamentally, you do look at their business in the summer and you think, why didn't you strengthen in any of these areas? Why have they not picked up better fullbacks? Why have they not strengthened the midfield? Again, they're going to rely on Doucouré and Capoue. And Capoue is fantastic, I think. Doucouré is okay. Had a really good game the other day, I thought. Fans immediately on his back.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just seems like they need to have a. They're a little bit like Brighton. Like some of their recruitment is interesting, but some of it is a bit lopsided, and it just seems like there's no path to the first team for the interesting signings they actually make. So I don't know. I'm a bit troubled by them if they do get rid of Gracia, because they've taken punts on managers the last few years.
Yeah.
Like they took a punt on Silva, they took a punt on Gracia. This is after Quique Sanchez-Flores, and you just feel at one point they're going to get a dud, and that will be enough to take them down because they don't have the talent.
Yeah, I think the most worrying area is the centre forwards. Like, you've already briefly mentioned it, but the centre forward roster is not good enough. Like, Andre Gray took his goal really well on the weekend, good finish, but
who was after that?
it's like Troy Deeney, Welbeck, and Andre Gray, and I just don't see that being a front line that gets you anywhere above a relegation scrap. Like, it's not going to pull you up to mid-table. It's not going to score the goals that Seb Haller is going to score this season. He was really good against Watford on the weekend and picked up, like you said, chances in amazing areas. Took his over a kick well, but
that's why it's so weird that they let Lukebakio go, because Lukebakio was a consistent scorer last season in the top league.
Hertha?
He's gone to Hertha, and has already got a goal, a heavily deflected goal against Bayern Munich, but. It just seems like he would have been a great player for them to have. A good dribbler, a good goal scorer, and very young. And that attacking line as well is old, right? Like, Welbeck's come in on a free, but Troy Deeney is old. Andre Gray is pretty old now. You look around that front line and there's
Welbeck
no real...
is old.
Yeah, there's no real... And they're all injury prone as well. So there's no real prospect to them getting better. Whereas they're young guys, I think they still have Adalberto Peñaranda, but he's never really come into the squad, I think, because of work permit issues. Cucho Hernandez, another consistent scorer last season, work permit issues. João Pedro, who's supposedly going to join in January, but yes, 17, and I'll be amazed if there aren't work permit issues. So, I don't know, they need to be thinking about how they turn this squad over, because fundamentally what keeps them from being Palace is that their talent is a little bit more spread around than Palace's is. But their squad is similarly ageing, and I do kind of worry for them, because if, say, Deulofeu got injured, you would think, where is the creativity coming from in this side?
Palace, another candidate? You've
Well,
got in down in Deuce?
Palace is a weird one to include in worst starts because they've got 4 points. They obviously beat United at Old Trafford the first time since 1989. That's a fine start, but it's less about their start and more about their current squad, the general feel. I mean, they spent 6.8 million in the summer, brought in Jordan Ayew permanently, let obviously Wan-Bissaka go, Camarasa came in on loan, Sorloth went out, and so their striking roster is Benteke, Jordan Ayew, who played fantastically well against Man United,
Brilliant.
and Connor Wickham, who have 8 Premier League goals between them in their last 85 games.
Yeah.
Since the start of 16-17.
Yeah, the fact that against United they were like, Christ, we need to mix up our strikers. Let's put Jordan Ayew in. Like that is really worrying because you look at Palace and you think, yeah, I don't know. When you say it's not about the start, it is a bit about the start. If you kind of look under the hood, because the top line numbers are fine, right? You know, they've got these 4 points. They've been away to Man United. That's pretty good. But then you look at the numbers below that, and expected points bottom of the league. Expected goals, I think they're already on like -4.5 after 3 games. After 3 games, like they've created, I think, something like 0.6 expected goals per game.
I think they've got the worst attack in the division according to that metric, and the 4th worst defence so far.
It's really this is definitely a recipe to go down. At least last season they didn't have to worry about the right hand side because Wan-Bissaka would mop everything up there. And they knew as well that Zaha would do something. And to be fair, they could probably help their striking issues by playing Zaha in, say, a 2 up front or something. Like, that would help them a lot. But fundamentally, you've got to get the ball to him first. He can't do it all on his own.
And they also, last year, they got given 11 penalties.
Jesus, really?
And scored 10 of them, which was 20% of their league goals. The next highest percentage of league goals was Man United and Brighton, which was 14. Everyone else is below that. 20% of their league goals came from penalties, and you cannot rely on that at all. Yeah. They've got no forwards. Zaha, you know, he's only played 2 and a bit games.
Puffs and puffs as well, doesn't he? Because everybody just marks him.
Looks like he's in a bit of a strop. And to be honest, you can't really judge someone after 2 games, but his key passes are now down to 0.4 per 90, which is the 6th best in Palace's squad, which tells you everything about their creativity in that squad right now. Yes, they played Everton. Yes, they played United, but they went away to Sheffield United, created virtually nothing. They played Everton at home, created virtually nothing. Like, Palace, don't let this amazing victory over Man United, which was a freak, by the way. Man United missed a penalty and got something like 2.2 expected goals to their 0.7.
You should have had another.
That would never have happened.
They had 3 shots.
They had 3 shots, and their squad is so old as well. The average, the players that have started so far, average age 28.6, which is I think one of the highest in the division. I don't see how Roy Hodgson really changes that with the options he's got on the bench either. So,
and they give these old guys big wages. Like they give guys like James Tompkins. I think that aren't they talking about new contracts and stuff? Like they give these guys big wages, and it means that they're really hard to shift.
Yeah.
Like they're a pound shot version of it, but they have the same issue as say Arsenal going to have with Mkhitaryan or Man United have with Alexis Sanchez. They've got these guys there on long-term contracts who are old. And yes, they are Premier League experience, but they might not be Premier League quality anymore. And they're on wages so big that they're not going to leave. So Palace could have done with selling both Wan-Bissaka and Zaha right at the beginning of the summer. And I know everyone said if they lose Zaha, they go down. But when you look at the rest of the squad, they're in so much trouble that if they just got rid of those 2 guys for, say, 110, 120 mil, and had been able just to add like 6 players or something around the squad, they'd be in a much, much better position because they're so... The problem is, even if you've got one really good player, and even if that player is the best player outside the top 6, which Zaha is not, you are still so fragile. Like, one injury knocks them out. And they're now in that position. And even not an injury, in this case, just a bit of bad form for Zaha, and they are going down.
They need Hodgson to perform a miracle. Like at this stage, they are actually relying on Roy Hodgson just to pull some genius out, and he has a habit of getting great results away at big teams as well.
Yeah.
We saw it last season, didn't we, against the likes of Manchester City? But don't expect that to continue forever.
Yes.
Like that has to stop at some stage, and it's more important to pick up points against your rivals for relegation than it is away at Manchester United. It's more important to beat Newcastle home and away, to beat Brighton, to beat Everton. It's way more important because looking at the start of the season, you'll be going, I'm probably going to get 0 points away at the top 6. Okay, you might pick up 3 or 4 points, but like losing to a Brighton like Watford did, like that is a crucial result because it fires them up as well, the opposition. And Palace cannot keep going on with a defence like this and a forward line like
And
this.
also, where is their cash as well? I mean, they finished 12th in the league last year, which was great. They finished 15 points clear of relegation. They should get a certain amount of that. They've got their TV money, but yet spent 6 million this summer.
They've got
50
45 for
for
Wan-Bissaka.
It's almost like they waited for they were so confident someone was going to pay the Zaha money, but it still wasn't done within days of the window finishing. They should have, I kind of agree with Pat, maybe sold him in June, reinvested more cleverly. Obviously, I didn't agree with losing him in the last week because that would have been even worse.
Yeah.
But I just think their window is really uninspiring. And look at the sides around them. Even Villa spent 130, Newcastle 60. I think Brighton another 60. Like, these teams were strengthening in good areas. Palace did nothing, and they've got no strikers, old squad, and rely on penalties. I think they're going down.
But who organises their transfers? Like they're the club where I do just think like you could genuinely get somebody who knows a tiny bit and has access to like who scored and like understat, and they'd be able to do better recruitment than they do, because it's telling that last season the two players who are their best players in the squad and the only players that you potentially want to take off them both came through their academy. Like, there's nobody there who they've recruited who you think, wow, that's a player really worth having. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that Mamadou Sakho is pretty decent. You know, and like there is some talent, and Van Aanholt's okay, but you look at them and you think, if the only two good players in your squad are guys who basically you were handed by the area that your club happens to be in, that's really troubling. Like, they don't have a single player who they recruited who you think, yeah, that was a really good buy.
And they don't really have any sellable assets either.
Well, except
Zaha.
Well, except for Zaha, sorry. But all their squad are so old, and even Max Meyer, we were expecting so much of him when he first came to Palace. He's been virtually anonymous.
Yeah, absolutely honest. I mean, a few people at home will probably be saying Chelsea and Man United, fairly disappointing starts to the season.
I don't know.
I think they've been pretty much stock for where we expected.
I think United have actually gone up a little bit in my estimation since the first game, weirdly. Like, in the first game, they were just getting cut to ribbons by a Chelsea side whose attack is not terribly good. Since then, they've been pretty strong. I thought they were... It's hard to tell how much of it was United being good or Wolves being too conservative, but they were the better side against Wolves. They were obviously massively the better side against Palace, and sometimes shit happens. That's just how it goes. But Man United so far actually look pretty decent. And Chelsea as well, you know, like, Chelsea have had some tough games. I mean, not Norwich away, like, we don't know how tough that game is yet, but you'd expect them to win that, and they did. Like, Leicester at home, I think that's pretty much two fairly evenly matched teams, and they drew. And then United away, that's just a tough game. Like, so I don't know. I feel like Chelsea will probably be okay, and United will probably be more than okay. But yeah, you'd say that probably you might be able to, I don't know.
5th and 6th, I think, at those two teams.
Yeah.
They're both finishing 5th or 6th.
I mean, you're 5th at the moment. I think
maybe,
that's probably where you're finished.
Like, United are clearly in transition, clearing out the squad. Sanchez gone in the last week.
The squad's really thin.
Smalling's gone in the last week. We've got a very thin squad. We're going to rely on the young players. Chelsea have got the exact same thing, where they couldn't bring anyone in. They've got a thin squad. They're going to rely on the youngsters. So I think
United have started better than Arsenal, though.
5th, 4th, 6th. Do you think? I think Arsenal have actually started really well. I would put them as the opposite to this question. I think they've been my surprise. I think they've been way better than I thought they were.
They've been where I probably think. I think United have been much more solid than I imagined. You can really see the benefits of stronger recruitment in the defence. I think they've got the best defence according to expected goals against at the moment. But then they have played in the league. They have played Palace, and they played a pretty poor Wolves side that day as well, who created very little.
I think Wolves are going to create very little all season.
And all the top six sides, except for Arsenal, have played 2 games at home, which does really benefit you, especially against the smaller sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are 3 pretty strong candidates. We're going Tottenham, Palace and Watford. Have you guys got any other names to throw into the mix or from across Europe? Let us know in the comments below. Oh, I just smacked myself in the nuts. Wow. Moving on then to quick fire questions. The first was sent in by Pato Posse, like one of your fanboys here, Pease. They say, which of Europe's giants do you think will miss out on the Champions League this season?
They miss out in qualifying.
Miss out in qualifying.
I don't know whether you call them a giant anymore, but probably AC Milan. I think they were really poor in their opening game against Udinese. They lost 1-0. Don't think they got a shot on target. They played Suso, Barini and Calhanoglu in a midfield 3, which is pretty rogue.
That's quite aggressive.
Well, it's just 3 sort of attacking midfielders / wingers. It was kind of weird. And then played Paqueta, and then didn't start Rafa Leao, didn't start Teo Hernandez, and now Gianpaolo is saying that he might revert away from his 4-3-1-2 after one game. Italian press were hammering after that, so I think they'll probably miss out on Champions League qualification, although it's only one game, so I will reserve judgment a bit further. But any big giants? I can't really think of
I would
anyone.
love it if PSG did. Do you imagine they just have a total catastrophe of a season?
What,
Once
they
it
finish
started,
fourth?
I would love it if Real Madrid did.
I mean,
I don't think that's even impossible.
They have a lot of
I'd be
injuries at the moment.
surprised.
And they're not good.
And they're all the same injury. They've all got a thigh injury.
And they got they were so lucky to escape with 3 points at Celta Vigo. Modric got a red card, so he'll be out. They've just generally been bad, and obviously Hazard's not playing. The midfield is still unbelievably porous. The midfield is like Casemiro defending, Modric doing ball progression, and Kroos just doing nothing.
Yeah.
He does do ball progression, but he's literally just a passer with no legs now. He's like one of those machines that fires baseball balls at 100 miles an hour. That's all he does. So I don't know. Toni Kroos is now just a passenger in that midfield, and if Modric gets injured, what is their midfield? They're still not playing Isco. They're still not playing James. Gareth Bale is apparently now an integral part of the squad again. Benzema's playing. They want to send Jovic out.
Any danger of Jovic getting a minute?
What are they actually doing? They're a disaster. So I don't know. I look at Real Madrid, and the fact is that if you were to say one area in their squad where they've got really strong personnel, it's probably at the back, where they do genuinely have a lot of depth. And yet their defence was woeful against Celta. So I don't know. I look at Real Madrid and I think, I could see this just exploding.
I think I saw on Twitter at the moment they've got 8 first-team injuries.
Yeah.
Ferdinand Mendy, Hazard, Asensio. I think Isco's now out for a while. I think James is now out for a while. So it's back to the old boys. It's back to the proven.
Yeah, but that's what it would have been anyway, though, because Zidane Willian was like, oh, he's so progressive, isn't he? No, he isn't. He's going to play the same boring style of football until it stops working. Then he'll switch it up and try and find another thing that vaguely works with the same people every time. They're never going to get better.
Right. So I think Madrid will make the cut, but they're not going to have a great season. Let's go on to the next one then. Fozzie Comp. Who will be the first Premier League manager to be let go or resign?
Well, your idea here was Gracia, right?
Yeah, I think Gracia. I think Gracia's got 3 weeks. I think Gracia's got 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
If they don't win this weekend, like you said, they've got then a tough run of fixtures. Was it Arsenal?
Wolves, Arsenal, Man City.
Yeah, I don't know. They're going to lose 2 of those.
After
3,
Manchester City, once they've lost 3-4-0 to City, then I think it will happen.
Because he's got some credit in the bank, though. Where did they finish last year? 9th and reached an FA Cup final, as you say. But yeah, I can't really think of a better candidate. You tend to think promoted managers will get at least.
Steve Bruce might have been an early candidate pre the Tottenham result.
Yeah, I think everyone was maybe a bit harsh on Steve Bruce, to be honest. I think it was not a proven not Premier League quality manager, but I think the criticism he got was maybe a bit unfair on someone that's been around the block, which isn't necessarily a good thing. But I think everyone was a bit harsh and did do a good job at Sunderland about 10 years ago. So I don't mind Steve Bruce. And yeah, people going on national radio and saying he doesn't work on team shape. Have some respect, Michael Chopra.
The Chopra incident.
I thought that was outrageous.
I think that of the promoted sides, Farke will be fine. If they were to go back down, I don't think they care that much. I think they've built a squad. They did so little work on their squad this summer that I think they just say, if we can stay up playing the football we played in the Championship, great. If not, we'll go back down and we'll probably come straight back up again because our squad's good and we have a system that works. And similarly, Chris Wilder can do anything that he wants with Sheffield because he's earned it. Villa a little bit more. I can see Villa being a bit more trigger happy. But
Dean Smith.
But fundamentally, I still think, Watford, Newcastle, and probably Palace as well because as good as Hodgson's been, they are perfectly capable of just sacking him. So the problem is, there's no point sacking someone if the squad. I don't feel like clubs are honest enough about this sometimes. They're like, let's just sack this manager, and he's like, but he's better than the next guy you'll get, and the squad genuinely is relegation level. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think Southampton needs to improve a fair amount as well. I haven't been impressed with them at the start of the season.
No, I haven't.
I thought they were pretty decent in some games.
I mean, they're going to be reliant on that front line just doing a bit of a madness. Redmond really showing up, Buffal finally hitting the ground running in the Premier League. And is it Gineppo? How do you pronounce it? Gineppo? Obviously scored a screamer at the weekend, but hitting the ground running pretty well.
They for some reason, Southampton just do not go and buy a quality forward. They go and take a bit of a gamble. And it's just no team in the league could just do more with just going out and buying a genuine top quality forward.
Yeah.
Because then they'd probably be pretty good.
Yeah. Jay Adams and Ings do look like they've got a bit of something going, beginning of a relationship.
While we're on the topic of that, let's get Flex King Dots question. Who will get more goals, Haller or Joelinton? Both players that would have been good for Southampton, by the way.
Is there anyone who thinks it's Joelinton?
Haller, yeah.
Definitely Haller.
Joelinton's got no support.
Joelinton at the weekend was just single-handedly dragging Newcastle up the pitch at times, and he's so isolated he can only last 60 minutes. He had cramp at about 40, He's just...
It's a thankless task, isn't it?
It's absolutely thankless. Seb Haller gets in great areas. Could have had a hat-trick on the weekend against Watford. I think he's going to...
It's quite funny watching Match of the Day pundits, or any pundits, try and analyse Seb Haller, because you can tell that they've never really watched him before.
Yeah.
And they keep on describing him as like a big target man up front who will like hold off, 10 in the area, basically like a, I don't know, Dean Ashton reborn. But he's got so much more to his game. I think it'll be great signing for West Ham now. He's got to full fitness as well after missing that second game.
Probably one of the most creative centre forwards you'll see in the league
Yeah.
this season.
Yeah.
He's going to make all the players around him work.
Yep. The next one from Adna Skshina, something like that. With the signings of Lukaku and Sanchez, plus his tactical brilliance, can Conte win Serie A ahead of Juventus?
No, probably not. I don't think swapping Perisic for Sanchez, as much as I criticise Perisic, isn't a massive upgrade, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree. Well, if Sanchez stays at his current form, unless he gets back to some of the pre-move to Man United form. But they were really impressive in the game against Lecce. Lukaku looked great, and we sort of failed to realise that the standard of defending in Serie A is actually quite poor outside of the top 5-6 teams. And Lukaku will bully defenders at the bottom of the reaches of that league. And playing with likes of Lautaro Martinez, Sanchez buzzing around him. I think they'll be comfortably second, but I don't think they can top Napoli.
Comfortably second?
Top Juventus.
Really?
Yeah, in my opinion.
I don't know, yeah, but maybe Conte bridges that gap. I think it's possible that they win the league, but I think it's like a narrow possibility. I don't know, they were behind Atalanta and Napoli last season, by pretty much all the metrics. I think Conte improves them, yeah, and some of their signings are really good. So I expect them to go up quite a bit, but if they finish within kind of 5 points of Juventus, that'll be a successful season.
Yeah, I see them in a similar sort of area, 5-10 points just off Juventus, but pushing them quite close to the line. Given that Juventus might have to bet a few players in, Sarri might take a little bit of time to adapt to his methods. I think that Inter will probably start the better of the two, maybe.
They've got a fantastic roster of central midfielders.
Like Duke says, Lukaku has a history of killing small teams. He's rubbish against the top elite players, but against smaller teams, he just hammers them. He just scores hat-tricks and 2 braces and a lot. He's fantastic against small teams, and I think he'll probably score 95% of his goals against bottom half teams and won't score against a top 4 contender. That's how he is.
They'll house a bunch of points against those guys, though, and there's still possibility that Icardi Dybala happens as a swap.
Could that still happen?
That's been rumoured very, very, very strongly. And so, if that were to happen, then you'd become quite positive about them, right? You'd look at a front line that had Sanchez on loan, that had Lautaro Martinez, Lukaku and Dybala, and then the midfield that is anchored by Brozovic, who was just out of this world last season. That's
played so well in the open game as well, Brozovic.
And a back three as well.
Sensi, Barella as well. They've got so many options in the middle of the park.
And they've got a back three of the... When everyone's fit, of De Vrij, Godin and Skriniar.
Yeah.
That's
a great
really,
team.
Really
and Asamoah I know is a left wing back against a promoted side, but he was having a great time at left wing back.
He's a good player, man.
Yeah.
Asamoah is a good player. D'Ambrosio is a good player. Ranocchia will be fine under Conte.
But either way, they're going to be fine. Lukaku will score 20 goals in Serie A. I reckon they'll compete pretty decently. Personal question. Let's finish up with Blaugrana 7754. Topical. Thoughts on the Breaking Bad movie? Will it be any good?
You guys take. I never watched Breaking Bad.
Never watched it.
No.
Well, it's good.
Sort your life out. Go and watch it. It's well worth it. Have you watched the trailer?
Yeah, I have.
Thoughts?
I don't really see why they're doing it. That's it.
You hated the ending though.
I didn't think the end of Breaking Bad was very good. The last episode is really, really bad. Up until then, it was great, but the last episode is just coincidence after coincidence. It's terrible. But I'm not really a fan of people going back to the well like this. Just leave it the way you finished it. If you wanted to finish it differently, you should have done that in the first place. It's not like Deadwood, right? Where Deadwood, they're making a movie because Deadwood got cut short after 3 seasons and it was the best TV show ever made.
What happened to Jesse Pinkman at the very end? Did he just drive off into the sunset? No, this is afterwards though.
He escaped and got away.
He escapes, doesn't he? Yeah. Oh my God, I think it's going to be fantastic. I'm buzzing. Although, having said that, has Aaron Paul done a decent film since he left Breaking Bad?
I don't think it'll be bad. My argument isn't that it'll be bad. I just don't see why it's going to exist.
I mean, it probably didn't have any meaning to me because I haven't watched the series, but I watched the trailer for some reason. I thought the trailer was awful. For someone who hasn't watched Breaking Bad the series, I was not.
Yeah, but you like Game of Thrones, mate. So let's just move on.
Oh,
So
how
does-
can you
so
throw that
does
out
the-
as an insult?
So does the world.
So does everybody in the world.
The world
It's the
into
most
lots of
popular
dumb
TV
things.
program of all time.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's good. Like Game of Thrones has
we're
maybe
going well.
5 good episodes.
I feel like
over
I had
the
this
course of
debate
its-
for about 3 months in a row,
Oh,
about
no.
a month ago.
Yeah, you were wrong the whole time when you were like, no, this last season will come good. No, the last season.
Yeah,
you
it
know
didn't
what?
come good,
It was
but
part of a trend downwards.
it's still an epic series.
It's an okay series with a
Whoa.
couple of good episodes.
We'll always agree to disagree on this. So.
Right, anyway, let's move on. If you want to get your question answered next week, put it in the comments below right now, or we're more likely to use it, to be honest, if you send it to us on Twitter during the week. You can follow us on the handles on screen now. What else is coming up, or has been?
Go on over to Euro Football Daily and go and check out yesterday's Stat Wars between myself and Joe.
Oh, yes.
And Friday's Continental Club, why not?
Anything else?
The Game's Gone Mad podcast with
Yeah.
me, Pete Dorman and Zach Jellub. Obviously, make sure that you're subscribed to that because it's a different perspective on the week's football news.
Yes. Oh, and I think there's a football social this afternoon as well. Liverpool versus Arsenal.
Arsenal versus Spurs, even.
Arsenal versus Spurs.
I will be on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so watch that as well.
Did get it right eventually. Yeah, Pat is on there. Thanks very much for watching. Au revoir.